I was just a shy intern making copies and fetching coffee when I saw an elderly man standing alone in our busy corporate lobby, clearly frustrated as person after person walked past him without a second glance. At first, I hesitated. My supervisor had told me to focus on presentation prep, not reception duties. But the more I watched, the more I couldn't ignore him. He was gesturing, his mouth forming words no one stopped to understand. Jessica, our receptionist, said briskly, "Sir, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. Do you have an appointment? Can you write down who you're here to see?" The man shook his head, trying again, his hands moving slightly in a way that made my heart lurch. He was signing. Not smoothly, but with urgency, fingerspelling something Jessica couldn't recognize. Jessica gave a polite but impatient smile before turning away to another visitor. The man stood there, shoulders slumping, his face clouding with defeat. Executives brushed past him without a glance. No one stopped. No one cared. I thought of Danny, my little brother. I thought of the way strangers sometimes looked right through him, as if deafness made him invisible. My chest tightened. I couldn't let this happen. Not again. My heart pounded as I walked to the desk. His eyes lifted to mine, weary and defensive as though bracing for dismissal. I forced myself to breathe and signed slowly, "Hello, my name is Catherine. Can I help you?" The change was instant. Relief washed over his face. His eyes widened, and then a smile, warm, genuine, transformed his whole expression. "You sign," he replied in graceful, practiced movements. "Thank goodness." I nodded, trying to steady my trembling hands. "Yes. Please tell me what you need." He signed, slower now, careful to be clear, "I am here to see my son, Michael Hartwell." For a moment I almost forgot to breathe. Michael Hartwell. Visio. This distinguished man, standing ignored in his own son's building. Of course, I signed back, keeping my movements calm even as my thoughts raced. "Let me help you." Around us, the lobby carried on, buzzing with stress and chatter. But in that small circle between us, it felt suddenly quiet. He straightened, dignity returning to his posture, as if my acknowledgement alone had lifted some invisible weight. "Thank you," he said aloud, his voice quiet but steady. His hand signed at the same time, "Thank you for seeing me." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "It's my pleasure," I signed back. And I meant it. I was beginning to think no one here would be able to understand me. The man signed, relief softening his features. "I'm so sorry you've been having trouble," I signed back, my hands moving carefully. "What can I help you with?" "I'm here to see my son," he explained. "But I'm not sure how to reach him. I don't have an appointment." And the young woman at the desk? He gestured toward Jessica, who was now busy with another visitor. She seemed very busy. "What's your son's name?" I asked, already bracing for the answer. "I can help you find him." He paused, something complicated crossing his face, a flicker of pride mingled with hesitation. Then he signed finally, deliberate and clear, "Michael Hartwell." My heart nearly stopped. Michael Hartwell. Visio. The name etched on the building directory, whispered in anxious tones whenever he walked the halls. The man with the corner office that spanned the entire top floor. "Mr. Hartwell is your son?" I signed, forcing my expression into neutrality even as my thoughts whirled. "Yes," he confirmed, his hands steady but his eyes vulnerable. "I know he's very busy, but I was hoping, well, I was in the neighborhood and I thought perhaps I could see him for just a few minutes." His effort to appear casual only made the longing in his expression sharper. This wasn't just a visitor dropping by. This was a father, uncertain if he belonged in his son's world. "Of course," I signed firm. "Let me see what I can do. Would you like to have a seat while I make some calls?" I guided him to the seating area, choosing a chair where he had a clear view of me so our communication wouldn't falter. Then came the challenge. How does a lowly intern arrange access to the CEO? I dialed Patricia, Michael Hartwell's executive assistant, every syllable rehearsed in my head. The line clicked. "Mr. Hartwell's office." "This is Patricia," came her crisp voice. "Hi, Patricia," I said, trying to sound calm. "This is Catherine Walsh from the intern program. I have a visitor here in the lobby who says he's Mr. Hartwell's father, and he'd like to see him if possible." Silence. A long pause like static stretching across the line. "His father?" Patricia repeated. "Yes, ma'am," I confirmed. "An elderly gentleman, very well dressed. He's been waiting in the lobby." Another pause, heavier this time. "I'll need to check with Mr. Hartwell. Can you have the visitor wait?" "Of course. Thank you." I hung up, exhaling slowly before returning to him. "Patricia is checking with your son now," I signed, smiling to soften the weight. It may take a few minutes. He nodded. Thank you. As we waited, our conversation began to flow. His name was Robert, he told me, and he had been an architect. His hands shaped the air with pride as he described designing several buildings that now define Chicago's skyline. His eyes warmed when he signed about his late wife, Michael's mother, a teacher at the Illinois School for the Deaf. When he spoke of raising Michael, the pride was tinged with sorrow. He has always been driven, Robert signed. Even as a boy, he wanted to prove himself. To show the world that having a deaf father didn't hold him back. He paused, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. I'm proud of him, but sometimes I worry he has forgotten how to slow down. How to just be. I nodded, signing gently. That sounds like a father who loves his son very much. His eyes softened, gratitude flickering there. But I noticed the stares. Employees passing through the lobby glanced at us, some curious, others annoyed. Jessica at the desk looked flustered as she answered whispered questions about why an intern was engaged in a sign language conversation in the middle of the lobby. Time dragged. 20 minutes, then 30. Finally, Patricia called back. Mr. Hartwell is in back-to-back meetings, she said curtly. He won't be available for at least another hour. I glanced at Robert. The disappointment in his eyes was sharp, though he tried to mask it with composure. Perhaps I should come back another time, he signed. I don't want to be a bother. You're not a bother, I signed quickly, leaning forward. Would you like to wait a little longer? I can show you around the building if you'd like. We have some beautiful artwork on the upper floors. His entire face brightened. I would love that. I haven't seen where Michael works. And so it began, the most unauthorized building tour in Meridian Communications history. I should have been collating handouts, chasing down binders, checking off Margaret's endless lists. Instead, I walked Robert through the company his son had built. In the creative department, I introduced him to designers and copywriters. Most gave quick, polite greetings before hurrying back to their work. But a few lingered, intrigued when I explained through signing that Robert was an architect. I translated, watched his eyes light up as he discussed design principles with them, his hands moving with the assurance of someone who had lived inside blueprints. On the account management floor, he studied the teams in conversation with fascination, his questions sharp and thoughtful. In the break room, he smiled as he signed about the old coffee shops he used to visit, comparing flavors and rituals with the young staff who laughed and leaned in to listen. Through it all, I translated, bridged the gap, watched the pride return to his posture with each new discovery about his son's company. And always, in the back of my mind, I felt the weight of what I wasn't doing, the copies unsorted, the binders unfinished, Margaret's growing impatience. Yet none of that seemed as important as the quiet joy in Robert's face as he finally truly belonged in his son's world. My phone buzzed over and over in my pocket, Margaret's increasingly urgent texts flashing across the screen. Where are you? You're supposed to be compiling the decks. The client briefing isn't going to print itself. I silenced the notifications with a guilty swipe, then looked back at Robert. His eyes were bright, alive with curiosity as he studied the data dashboards in the marketing analytics department. I couldn't bring myself to interrupt that joy. It was then that I noticed him. On the mezzanine level above, half hidden behind a pillar, stood Michael Hartwell. For a split second I thought I'd imagined him, but no, he was there, still as stone, watching. His gaze wasn't on the employees or the screens or the numbers. It was on his father. On me. My breath caught. The CEO of Meridian Communications was watching me give what had to be the most unauthorized tour in company history. My stomach dropped. Any second now he'd stride down the stairs, call security, and I'd be out on the sidewalk with my intern badge revoked. Worse, Robert would be humiliated. I glanced back up nervously, but by then Michael was gone. Trying to push away the panic, I continued the tour. Robert asked thoughtful questions about the conference rooms and the client presentations that took place there. He lingered over the library, where Meridian's award-winning campaigns were displayed in glass cases. When we finally reached the executive floor, his eyes widened, taking in the polished wood paneling, the sleek lines of the offices, the carefully curated artwork on the walls. Michael built all of this, he signed, his hands moving with deliberate pride. I signed back he did. The company has grown tremendously under his leadership. Everyone here respects him deeply. Robert nodded, but there was a flicker of something wistful in his expression. I'm proud of him, he signed. Then he hesitated, his hands slowing. I just wish. What do you wish? I asked gently. He sighed, shoulders sinking. I wish I knew him better as an adult. When he was young we were very close. But after his mother died. His hands stilled briefly before resuming. He stopped leaning on me. He thought my deafness made me fragile, that he needed to protect me. So he carried everything himself. He never asked for help again. The ache in his expression hollowed me out. My chest tightened with an ache of my own, for both of them. For Robert, excluded from his son's world, and for Michael, who had walled himself off in strength that must have felt very much like loneliness. By the time we returned to the lobby, it was almost 3 o'clock. Robert's scheduled meeting time had long since passed. I could see the resignation in his shoulders, the quiet acceptance settling in. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might echo off the walls. Somehow, I found myself following him toward the elevator, Robert walking at his side. Margaret had vanished, no doubt retreating to recover from the shock of watching the CEO intervene on behalf of her intern. The elevator ride was hushed except for the low hum of machinery. I kept glancing at Robert, who seemed almost to glow with happiness, and at Michael, whose expression was intense and unreadable, as if he was carrying words that weighed heavily inside him. Michael's office was every bit the powerhouse space I had imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto a sweeping view of the Chicago skyline. Elegant furniture gleamed with polish, and the walls were lined with awards, framed articles, and photographs chronicling the company's ascent. Yet for all its grandeur, the office felt impersonal, more like a showroom than a reflection of the man himself. "Please sit," Michael said, gesturing toward the leather chairs in front of his desk. Robert and I sat down. Instead of taking his seat behind the imposing desk, Michael chose the chair beside his father. A small act, but one that softened the room instantly. "Miss Walsh," he began, his voice careful. "I owe you an apology and an explanation." I blinked, caught off guard. "An apology, sir? I'm the one who should be apologizing. I know I was supposed to be working on the presentation materials and instead He lifted a hand, stopping me. "You did exactly what you should have done. What I wish more of my employees would do." His gaze shifted to his father, and in it I saw a raw mixture of love and regret. "My father has visited this office exactly 3 times in the 10 years since I became CEO. Each time he was treated like an inconvenience, like a disruption to the important work happening here. And each time I stood back and watched as my own employees, people I hired, people who represent me, made him feel unwelcome in his own son's workplace." Robert touched his son's arm gently, signing something I couldn't catch from where I sat. Michael gave a small nod, his throat working before he continued. "Today was different," he said. His voice thickened with emotion. "Today, I watched a 22-year-old intern abandon her assigned duties to spend 3 hours making my father feel valued, respected, and included. I watched her translate conversations, facilitate connections, and treat him not as a burden, not as an obstacle, but as an honored guest." His eyes flicked to mine, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. "I watched her give him something I haven't given him in years," he said quietly, "the feeling that he belongs in my world." Tears threatened to spill over. My hands trembled as I signed back, my voice low. "Mr. Hartwell, I have a younger brother who's deaf. I know how it feels when people ignore him, when they treat him like he's invisible. I couldn't stand to see that happen to your father. And that," Michael said, his voice steady now, "is exactly why I need to talk to you about your future here." My stomach dropped like a stone. The words hit me with cold certainty. This was it, the gentle dismissal, the formal letdown before termination. "I understand if you need to let me go," I said softly. "I know I didn't do my assigned work today." But Michael's brow furrowed as if the thought hadn't even crossed his mind. "Let you go?" he repeated, incredulous. "Miss Walsh, I want to offer you a job. A real job. Not an internship." I stared, uncomprehending. My heart stuttered in my chest. "I'm sorry, what?" "What I witnessed today showed me something this company is missing," he said firmly. "We talk about diversity and inclusion in our mission statement. We write it in the employee handbook. But we don't live it. We don't embody it. I want to change that, and I want you to help me do it." Robert was beaming beside him, his hands moving rapidly in signs I couldn't keep up with. His pride, his joy, filled the space like sunlight. Michael smiled and signed back to his father, then turned toward me. "I'm creating a new position," he said carefully, his tone deliberate, "Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. It would be your job to ensure that Meridian Communications is truly accessible to everyone. Employees, clients, and visitors. You'd develop training programs, create policies, and serve as an advocate for people who might otherwise be overlooked or excluded. You'd report directly to me." I felt dizzy, almost lightheaded. My throat tightened as I tried to find words. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm just an intern," I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. I don't have experience in human resources or policy development. I don't even have my degree yet. I'm still finishing my last semester. You have something more valuable than experience, Michael said. His gaze didn't waver, his hands folded loosely on the desk. You have empathy. You have the ability to see people as individuals rather than inconveniences. And you have a skill set that could transform how this company operates. He paused, then added with quiet emphasis. The position would come with a substantial salary, full benefits, and the authority to implement real change. You'd report directly to me. I looked instinctively toward Robert. His whole posture vibrated with excitement, his hands almost twitching with the urge to sign. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod of encouragement, pride radiating through his expression. Turning back to Michael, I whispered, I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Michael suggested gently. Take the weekend. But I hope you'll say yes. This company needs someone like you. I need someone like you. After that, the rest of the meeting blurred into fragments. There were details about the position, discussions of salary and benefits that made my head spin, and early sketches of the cultural changes that would need to happen across the entire organization. I tried to absorb it all, but my mind kept circling back to the enormity of it, how a single moment in the lobby had led me here. By the time I left Michael's office, my life felt completely upended. At the elevator, Robert hugged me tightly. His hands moved quickly as he signed his thanks over and over again. You've given me my son back, he told me with tears brightening his eyes. And you've given him something he didn't even know he was missing. Michael walked us both to the elevator. As the doors began to close, he caught my gaze one last time. Catherine, he said softly, thank you for seeing him, for seeing what was important. That night, when I got home, I called my parents first, stumbling through the story, hardly believing it myself. Then I video called Danny. His face lit up when he saw me. You're going to help other deaf people at work? He signed with enthusiasm. Yes, I signed back, trying not to cry. That's so cool, Danny said, his hands flying in quick, excited motions. You're going to be like a superhero for people like me. His enthusiasm was contagious. By the time I closed the call, I already knew what my answer would be. By Monday morning, I had decided. Love this story? Like, share, and subscribe for more epic audio adventures. Stay curious and keep listening.